Very, very powerful tool. This is more about branding and merchandising money, marketing money in how I can help someone buy something. This particular one is in Home Depot, and the company that we worked with on this project, they were doing so badly, they spent millions of dollars on radio and newspaper and television trying to get their message out. They put these screens in the shelf, and their sales went up 85%. 85%. From being almost kicked off the shelf to be voted the vendor of the year because of digital signage. Pretty amazing. So there's some really fantastic results that come along with these screens. Of course, in malls, we see them here. This one is in ad space, and you know, it's kind of a hybrid between advertising and shopping. I'm walking by the screen, but the way they're positioned, they're big, they're high-definition screens. And there's some interesting things that happen with high definition, and this is one place where high definition is used very well in malls, and you see it even here, where if I look at high definition, the mind thinks of it as a window. Why does it do that? Well, one, the resolution is high, but if I look at standard television, the mind thinks it's a picture. Has 25% of the color. When you go to high definition, it's 75% of the color. So the reason I tell you this is because that message, now life-size and very high resolution and a high color, becomes more impact on my mind. It lasts longer. And we did some studies around this with some high-definition, big screens projects. The next one down below is another, I think, a very, very unique use of digital signage, not in advertising signage, but I brought this because it's in a restaurant in Vegas, creates a mood. So this is a sushi restaurant, and actually it has fish going through there, and art and things like that nature. They've even used them out on the streets of New York, Chicago, major cities to announce movies. In the one on the lower left, where I think that movie's Caroline, and you know, where they had some interactive, gestural interaction with the screen. And of course, billboards, like the one on the top, corporate communications, the university, banks, elevators. This one in the middle there with the Surface, that's Microsoft Surface. That's a project actually at a museum in Australia. But they also use this in New York to help get directions and things like that. Very, very interesting interactive signage. Target, up on the upper right there. Menu boards. Phenomenal savings around menu boards. And I think the last one's significant because this is where I have a brand, Coca-Cola, that owns 20 digital signs, digital billboards in the U.S. That is how serious this industry is about this as a medium. Very rarely do you hear a brand owning its own media. I'm going to do a few more statistics. If you look at how many millions of people in the U.S. see these screens, again, it's phenomenal. Grocery store. 90% of America visits the grocery store out of 232 million, with 31% actually noticed and saw the screens. 72 million people every month sees those screens in shopping grocery stores. Shopping malls next, 70%. Large department retail stores, 69%. Medical office, again, doctor's offices, medical office building, hospitals, 69%. So very high numbers. And the other numbers are growing. You have more coffee shops, you have more bars that are being built, networks that are being built out, and health clubs, transportation, elevators. But it is a significant audience when you start looking at how many people actually see these screens. For the last 3 days, I've been going around and looking at all the networks here in Sao Paulo. I'm very impressed with the scale at where this industry is here. But I think what's even more telling, it's had the largest growth in revenue since January 2009, a 55% compound annual growth. And between January and June of 2010, 82% growth rate. So media agencies are noticing these screens, and they're starting to buy because it works. The investment's still small. Now you think, okay, that's high growth rate, it's big, but it's only less than 0.5% of the total advertising market at this point. But when you look at out-of-home, it's almost 20%. And of course, I think it's a great alternative to billboards that are not allowed here in Sao Paulo. So you have another way to reach the out-of-home market. Just a little further, a few more statistics on digital out-of-home. Again, how big the growth is compared to the rest of the industry. Just between January and June of 2010, 82% again. Out-of-home was only 20% up, and the whole advertising market was up 30%. But you can see the rate at which the growth is happening. How many people really see these screens in the last 7 days out of the total universe of 12 million? That's close to 6 million that have seen these screens in the last 7 days. In the last 30 days, over 8 million. So again, these screens are being noticed and watched in the marketplace. So if you look at just the total market, it is a very small piece of the market. Out-of-home is a small piece of the market. But I don't know why I have 0. I think because my slides got transferred to another computer, so it's not reading the actual statistics. And I don't recall what those statistics are, but I do know that out-of-home is 0.5% of that. Total out-of-home. Again, compared to the U.S. and the UK, I can tell you the U.S. is 34% of the total out-of-home spend. Here in Brazil, it's about 14%. In the UK, I think it's about 16%. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's about there. So you can see the relevance to how big the market is in the U.S. We have an industry that's been very active and in high growth. The few years before the economic downturn, it had a 50% annual growth. So it's very high, and still even this year, and last year actually in the technology part, the deployment part, it was up 25%, even in the economic conditions there are. So trends in the U.S. Content. As in any screen, television, PC, it does not matter what the technology is behind the screen. It matters what the content is. And focus was first in this industry very much on the technology. How do we get it to the marketplace? How do we connect it? All that good stuff. But now, content has been highly developed based on our previous experience of the other screens, and it's getting better and better and better. And I can say here in Brazil, the content is very high. The creative content is very high. But that is a huge trend in the U.S. To put better content and better understand how it works, what really works in the marketplace, what's the speed of the content. And it's usually with movement combined with a relevant information. But it still has to be high quality because people expect a certain standard of production when they're watching a screen. And it's competitive in that sense. The other thing I think is really interesting is the engagement and that experience and that interaction that happens from the screen. These screens can also be a key engagement for mobile. My pocket screen, which is my personal screen, very, very difficult to get a hold of. So when I throw a screen in front of someone and there's an SMS code or something like that where I can engage and then have a latent conversation through mobile, the agency's brands like that. It's an engagement experience, and there also is interactive screens, touch screens, gestural screens coming in the U.S. that, screens that are projected onto the floor where if I can interact with them. So this whole engagement and tactile side of it can happen with this type of screen that you can't get from other medias. The strategic sensibility in the U.S., a lot of people have built the networks saying, oh, if we build it, they will come. But now the approach is more strategic in that trend where I have a very, very strong plan and strategy of what my audience is, what kind of network I'm building, and there's a better understanding of installing these screens, not just install them and go, okay, now what do we do with them, but have the full plan in place to make it work. Measurement and acceptance, very, very big for the advertisers and the brands. They want to know that what they're buying is solid. I think all of those standards really raised with the third screen being PC and internet. There's a lot of data that's coming back, so that really has spilled over into the digital out-of-home world, and to say that I need to prove that there is an audience there. So Nielsen, Arbitron, People Count in the U.S. Do studies around this and then provide those hard numbers that say, yes, there's real people really looking at those screens. And the networks that have done those studies are successful with the advertisers. And there's also technology available, cameras that can be used on the screen that actually see how long a person looked at the screen. They count the people. They don't take pictures. They just count the data. And those are used in specific areas, and then they calculate the rest of the network out from there. Another area that's a little more technical is the software improvements and delivery of messages to the ads, actually being able to take an ad and put it in the network and get it to the right place at the right time. Some networks have had difficulty with that, which leads really into content standards. That's one thing when you place an ad on a network, one network with the same software, that's great. But we have 200 and some odd networks where I need to place ads, and I can't do it all in one because this one wants video, this one wants flash, this one wants QuickTime. So that consolidation and standardization will happen. Tipping point in 2010, and what I mean by that really for the U.S. is that actually we've reached the point where the media is being accepted, and we're at that tipping point where people are actually buying the media and these screens are being deployed in larger scale projects. More mergers and acquisitions, we see that happening here in Brazil too, to create more investment into the space. And of course, growth in the ad networks and shift in the ad dollars. So pretty compelling things and trends that are going on in the U.S. I think here in Brazil, the economic indicators are strong. Some of the advantages that Brazil has is that there's less risk. We have proven technologies, which we went through a few black eyes in the U.S. based on technology or based on the wrong business model, etc. But Brazil has an opportunity to really rapidly expand these networks because of those proof points and successes that are based on U.S. and EU business models. And the cost of flat screen, holy cow, half to build the network of what I used to pay only two or 3 years ago. So less investment can build more. And I think that really, between the cost and the effectiveness and the success of the networks, I think it creates this perfect storm for media and ad dollars to begin to shift even more so towards this media. So these are some of the venues I visited. Airports, Great model with the advertising right in the center of the screen. So whenever I'm there at the airport, I'm looking. You guys have seen them. I'm looking at the screen. There's my flight.